Hey guys, welcome back to Side B. I am Connor, and today I am calling it ISO to talk about some of my favorite underrated albums of 2025. I'm really excited to get into this. This was a great year for music, and there was so much good shit coming out that a lot of people skipped over a couple albums, and I'm hoping that by making this video, I get to put you guys onto something that will bring you into the new year. And maybe, if I'm lucky, you guys will comment down below and give me some of your underrated albums for me to listen to as the new year begins. So without further ado, let's get into number 5. Now, I don't mean to brag or anything, but I actually used the urinal next to this artist at the Blue Note Jazz Club in 2024, and I am of course talking about Red Veil and his album this year, Sankofa. People seem to forget that Red Veil is only 21, and despite his young age, he's already put together a pretty decent discography. Last talking about Learn to Swim, which was a great album in its own right, and even from that to now, Sankofa is a much more mature album, both sonically and lyrically. We have these, masterful layered instrumentals with some of Red Veil's most introspective lyrics and writing, specifically on tracks like Mini Me. I am extremely impressed by this album as a whole. The only real complaints I have are that sometimes Red Veil sounds a little bit abrasive on the slower tracks. He comes in a little bit louder than he means to, and I don't think it's intentional. And then the album does lack a little bit of coherency. If there is going to be like a through line listen, it's kind of disjointed. But with both of those things aside, this album and its serious kind of emotional tracks really stuck out to me, and I think Red Veil is going to be one of the best in the game in a couple years. Give it a listen. I think you'll be impressed. This album has something for everybody. Gold star here goes to Pray For Me. Great work on the keys, solid delivery, flow, lyrics especially, and I think that would be the entry point to this album for me.
Mornings designated for black coffee in comparison. Woke up cold, so I took a warm bath in embarrassment. The perfect symphony.
So coming in at number 4 is Guy Scavara's Goyar Ibn Sa'i. One thing you guys are going to learn about me is that I love an album that does something new, especially when that album is a narrative through and through, and that is what this album delivers. In a year with a lukewarm, introspective scene in the underground, Guys delivers a pretty bold concept album that uses a 2-act structure to cover themes. He talks about, politics, society, the industry, a lot of these big topics that, artists love to cover in these types of albums, but through this structure, it creates this cohesive narrative that brings everything together. And even sonically, the production sticks out to me, as we haven't really been receiving as many experimental rap albums as we typically do, and if we do, they're usually on the harder side. This album has some trap jazz, which I love, and it's raw. If you're looking for an album that may not be a particularly easy listen but will still leave an impact, this is the one. The gold star from this album is the title track, The Old Guard Is Dead, which you may recognize from the Apple Music introduction to Kendrick Lamar's halftime show. Great album, great statement track, infectious as hell, just a really good way to open the album, so please give this album a listen if you haven't already. So coming in at number 3 for me is not only an album that I feel is very underrated, but also one of the best of the year, and that is Quedeca's Vanisher Horizon Scraper. And I've been paying attention to Quedeca for a long while now, and I feel this album is really his moment where he comes into his own. It's packed with those cinematic, transcendent moments in the instrumentals that he is so good at creating. But that's not to say that the album is not impactful lyrically or, cinematically as well, even. It's, long story short, it's a kind of a retelling of some myths and parables from Asian culture about various travels through the ocean. We have storms, lulls, and on the standout track of the album, The Great Bacchanal, we have Danny Brown rapping from the perspective of a sea serpent, which, how do you even think of that? But it's fantastic. I will always tune in when Danny Brown raps from the perspective of some weird-ass object or creature. But just genuinely, this album is transcendent of any genre that I could put it in, and I just have to say to give it a listen.
I'm the beast of the night, ain't about to take flight. Take the light from the dark, wanna swim with the sharks. When I start to play my part, I can make that.
So number 2 on this list is an album that may not be as underrated as some of the others, but still deserves a spot due to just how genre breaking it is, and that is Geese's Getting Killed. I'll keep it a buck with you. I thought this was ass when I first listened to it. However, I have come out of listening to it a couple times with the firm belief that these guys might be the next big thing. While this album did take off, again, I just feel like it deserves a spot due to Cameron Winter's songwriting, which just takes it from, oh, like nice production, you know, kind of quirky, kind of cool, to like, oh shit, this may be the emergence of a new rock powerhouse. Geese is undefinable, and I kind of cringe at putting them into a box or comping them to another artist. But the most common comparison I see is Radiohead off of Perk, and I would have to agree. There is not a single dull moment on this album in any way. And the gold star for this goes to Getting Killed, the title track. Start to finish, it is the essence of Geese. It's a summary of what you can expect with their music, and I would highly recommend this album to anyone who enjoys rock of any type. So before I get to my number one pick, I wanted to take a second to acknowledge some albums that did not make the list, but very well could have. Number one, Daniel Caesar's Son of Spurgey. Great soul album. Didn't really do great critically, but I really enjoyed it. Rebecca Black surprisingly dropped a project called Salvation that I really enjoyed, and The Emperor's New Clothes by Raekwon. Great album, did get some buzz, but not nearly as much as it should have for the quality of work. And then I'm covering this album more in a future video, but Ray Vaughan's The Good, the Bad, and the Dollar Menu is a fantastic, debut album, or mixtape as he calls it, but it's basically an album for TDE's upcoming powerhouse. So take some time, check these out if you're interested. Besides that, let's get to number one. So at the end of our list now, I am going to give you my number one pick for the most underrated album of 2025, and that is Ben Reilly's Save. Now, if you're familiar with your comic books, you know who Ben Reilly is, and in this case, the artist's name matches the album perfectly. It's an extremely unique and cinematic concept album that frames the music as a kind of hero's journey in a superhero story. I won't go heavily into it, but you have kind of every single aspect and part of the hero's journey covered, which kind of gives it a far more complete and cohesive narrative than a lot of the other albums on this list. And for a debut album, it is extraordinarily impressive that he was able to pull this off in such a cohesive way. What strikes me the most is that he kind of weaves his personal stories through these, larger than life narrative tracks in a way that doesn't feel jarring or like a drastic tonal shift. Just a really strong showing from Ben Reilly, and I'm super excited to see what he does next. Standout track here is Power. Just a banger. Go listen to it. I won't give anything away, but please take some time out of your weeks to go listen to this album. I promise you will not be disappointed.
Power on me like a motherfucker. 100,000 on me like a motherfucker. About to go and see about a
Thank you guys for tuning in to the top 5 underrated albums of 2025 list. I had a pretty good time re-listening to these albums to make this video, and I'm really excited I was able to do it and get this out before the new year. Really good year for music overall, I feel, and I'm excited to see what all these artists do in the future. So with that being said, I hope you guys have an awesome holiday season. Like, comment, and subscribe for my holiday gift. We have a couple cool things coming, dropping in the next week or so. I think you guys will like it. So yeah, with all that said, have a great holiday. Peace.